Hey everyone, it's Zoe. Welcome to our regular fortnightly live Q&A session. Today I'm going to tackle how to read a food label, especially after weight loss surgery, because the things you need to look for are slightly different to what you normally need to look for. What I'm trying to do, and it'll probably be just another few days or so, is the next blog post trying to put label reading into an easy to understand format, and then develop some sort of downloadable, like a little wallet card, so you know what you're looking for, but it's not a huge big PDF, so it's a bit easier to take around with you to the supermarket. The hardest thing about labels is sometimes they can be a little bit misleading. So obviously, prefacing the whole talk about labels is saying that most of the food that you're eating should ideally not be packaged, so that it shouldn't be processed, and there shouldn't be too many labels then that you have to worry about. There is always going to be some labels, and look, if you don't read every single label, that's not the end of the world, but if you are interested in sort of deciding between two products, there are certain things that you can look at. I have my trusty high protein milk, which is a fabulous milk if anybody is interested. It has 70% more protein, more calcium and less lactose than the usual regular light milk, and it's got a 5-star health rating. So if we have a look at the label here, a few things that you'll see on the front. Usually if there are any claims on the front like these ones, they'll be there, but take them with a grain of salt. You need to do a little bit more investigation. So ideally you're looking for things that say that they are a good source of protein, that they are high in fiber, that they are no added sugar, but be very careful with that one for reasons I'll explain in a minute. And other things that you will see now are the health star rating. So before you even turn over the packet, a health star rating is a really easy thing to look at. The higher the stars, the better quality the food is. So 5 stars on the milk means it's a great product, okay, it's fine. There are sort of some exceptions to the rule. For example, nuts come up with a lower health star rating because they're higher in fat, which we know that they're not a bad food to eat, but it's just the way that the algorithm works. And certain things like Milo, for example, I'm pretty sure, let me just double check, Milo has either a 4 or 5-star health rating, which is a little bit misleading because it can, it is added sugar, even though it's fortified with lots of vitamins and minerals, and they're talking about the health star rating once it's added with milk, which is why it's come up to be 4.5 stars. I've just read, though, I just Googled then, and I think that it has taken the 4.5 star rating off the Milo products because people complained about it. So there are some issues with the health star rating, but generally speaking, the higher the stars, the better the product. Then the next thing to do is to turn over and to have a look at the ingredients list, okay? So I'm not sure if you can see there, and it's probably going to be backwards for you too, which isn't going to be very helpful. But the ingredients here are filtered low-fat milk, all right? So you know there that there's only one ingredient. The best thing you can do is look for the top 3 ingredients on the ingredients list, because the ingredients list is ranked in order of most prominent to least prominent ingredient in the product. So a product that has more than one ingredient, for example, let's take a Weet-Bix for say, will have lots of different ingredients listed. The best thing you can do is to look for the top 3, because that'll be the majority of the product. And if any of those top 3 are fat, salt or sugar in any way, shape or form, so it might be things like oil, butter, chocolate milk solids, cofa, coconut oil, palm oil, vegetable shortening, they're all words for fat. Sugars might be other things, anything that ends with an ose. So things like dextrose, fructose, maltose, golden syrup, honey, lactose, caster sugar, what else? Raw sugar, sucrose. They're all words for sugar. And salt will be things like MSG extracts, like malt extract or yeast extract, or celery salt, onion salt, rock salt, anything with a salt in it. You want to try and stay away from any of those, fat, sugar, or salt being in the top 3 ingredients. If they are, it's probably best just to put it back on the shelf. Okay, so those 2 things, just looking at the claims on the front, the health star rating, and then the ingredients list, really can give you a really clear idea about what is in that food and whether it's going to be a good choice or not, without even worrying about all the tricky numbers in the nutrition information panel. If you do want to look at the nutrition information panel, you'll see that there are 3 columns, normally 3 columns. You have the nutrients down the side, so that's where it says energy, protein, fat, saturated fat. This one has multiple things because they're trying to claim that they have lots of extra vitamins and minerals in there. So if a food company has claimed something on the front, like this one has 40% more calcium, they need to put the calcium in the food label on the back. Not all products will have things like calcium, not all products will have things like fiber, but they will always have energy, protein, fat, saturated fat, carbohydrate, sugars, and sodium. Okay, so that's the bare minimum. So that's the first column. Then you'll have 2 columns next to that in a basic label. So you'll have a per serve column and a per 100 gram column. And up the top you'll have a little bit of information that says servings per package and then the serving size. So this one for the milk, there are 4 servings per package and the serving size is 250 mils. The biggest thing for after you've had a sleeve is to think about that serving size. It is very rare where you will actually have 250 mils of milk in one go. Okay, one of my pet hates as well is products that say that, for example, you know the little tubs of yogurt, sometimes they will say that 170 or 180 or 200 ml tub of yogurt actually has 2 serves in it. And I don't know very many people that will take the lid off, eat half of the yogurt, put the little paper lid back on and then put it back in the fridge. So you just need to be very wary as to how many serves are in that listed on that label, because we use the per serve column. If you're not actually eating the serving size, then you're going to be sort of eating more or less than you think you are. So the things that we look for on the serving size are things like the energy. Because if we work out, say we are going to have 250 mils of milk, ideally what you want is for a snack to be around about 100 calories or 400 to 600 kilojoules, 100 to 150 calories. And you want your meals to be around 300 calories or so. That gives you, if you have 3 meals and 3 snacks, it gives you around about 1,200 calories a day. So you want to be looking at how much is this food going to contribute. So especially important for snacks, because really easily you can eat a lot more calories than you think just because of the snack. So if you know that you're going to have a 250 ml glass of milk as your snack, the energy in here is 128 calories. So that's actually probably a decent amount of calories. With meals, it's a little bit trickier because you're usually just cooking or putting stuff in together. So you might need to do a little bit of mental maths, which sometimes isn't so fun, but it's not too tricky. So then you're going to look for protein. So protein is the next one on the list, and normally for somebody that's had weight loss surgery, ideally you would want the protein per serve to be 5 grams if it's a snack, and ideally 10 grams or more if it's a meal. So really having a look at that. For example, this one, the milk, in the serving of per serve of milk, there's 15 grams of protein. So again, we'd tick that box. The next one down is the fat. Don't worry so much about the total fat, but the saturated fat, you really want to be looking for less than 3 grams per 100 grams. So that's a little bit different. So you're going to use the per 100 gram column. So this milk here, so we're going over to the per 100 gram column, has 1 gram of saturated fat per 100 grams, which is great. Fine, ticks the box so far. The carbohydrates and the sugars gets a little bit tricky. Ideally, if you have had a sleeve, you are wanting to go a little bit lower in carbohydrate than a normal person. And also some people can feel a bit upset by sugary foods. So as a general rule, we want to try and keep sugar to less than 10 grams per 100 grams, but maybe even lower than that. For somebody, if you suffer from dumping syndrome or you're a bit intolerant to sugary foods, then you're probably looking at 5 grams per 100 grams. So in here, the total sugars is 3.3 grams per 100 mils. So again, that still meets the criteria. Sometimes the sugars will be higher than you think because sugar occurs naturally in foods like dairy. So even though sugar is not listed on the ingredients, it still has sugar in there, and that's because lactose is the sugar that occurs naturally in dairy. Other foods that naturally have dairy are fruit and starchy vegetables, anything with fruit and dairy in it. So sometimes things like cereals might have dried fruit, which is where the added sugar, where the sugar comes from. So it's always good to go back to that ingredients list and just go, hang on a second, is it added sugar or is it not? Unfortunately, we don't have any laws in Australia that has to separate out natural sugar and added sugar on the labels. It's too difficult to do. So we have to do the best that we can by saying, oh, hang on, there is some sugar in that product, so I'm going to check the ingredients label. In this case, there's no sugar listed on the ingredients in the ingredients list, so it's actually an okay product to have. Okay, because it's just natural sugar. But remembering that sometimes people are more intolerant to lactose, so sometimes straight milk just won't work very well. Okay, the next thing we've got going down the column is dietary fiber. Not all foods will have fiber in it. Milk has 0 fiber, for example. Fiber you're mostly going to get from fruit, vegetables, and grains. And you want to try and go for things that are whole grain and that have more than 3 grams of fiber per serve. Okay, more than 5 or 6 is excellent, but more than 3 grams is good. Okay, so you're obviously not always going to have a food that has fiber in it, but if you are buying anything, 1, go for whole grains, and 2, go for 3 grams per serve. And the last one is sodium. Sodium is another word for salt, and really difficult to get low salt or low sodium packaged foods because salt is used as a preservative. So it's hard sometimes to find things that are low in salt. Even things like bread, for example, that you think wouldn't have that much salt in it, is really high in sodium, just because salt is needed for the baking process. So what you want to look for is anything less than 400 milligrams per 100 grams. That's good. Less than 120 milligrams per 100 grams of sodium is excellent, and you might sometimes just have to, if you're comparing 2 products, take the one with the least amount of salt in it. Ideally, the limit that we should be aiming for each day is 2,000 milligrams of salt total over the day, which is difficult to do if you're eating processed foods or if you're adding lots of salt into cooking. Most of our salt comes from packaged foods. So if you're eating mainly unprocessed foods, then most of the time you should be okay in terms of your salt intake. So this one here, we're just having a look. Sodium per 100 mils is 27 milligrams per 100 grams. So that's a really good low sodium product. So overall, this one has met every single criteria except for fiber, because milk doesn't have fiber in it. So this would be a good product to choose. I think hopefully that has made sense to you. If you want to comment, ask any questions that you have, I'll just go over it again quickly. First thing to do is to look for any claims on the front and to look for the health star rating. The higher the stars, the better the better the product is. Then turn over to the ingredients list. On the ingredients list, check the first 3, and if any of them are fat, sugar, or salt, put it back on the shelf. Okay? Step 3 is to look at the nutrition information panel, but look at the serving size first. Make sure that what you're actually going to eat is that serving size, and if it's not, most of the time you're not going to eat as much as the serving size suggests, just because of the size of your stomach. So you may need to adjust what you think you're eating based on that serving size. Then I want you to look at the calories or the energy. If it's a snack, you're looking for around 100 to 150 calories, and a meal around 300 calories. So use the per serve column for that. Protein, we're looking for more than ideally 5 grams of protein if it's a snack, or 10 grams of protein if it's a meal. Fat, we're looking for as little saturated fat as possible, so less than 3 grams per 100 grams is best. Carbohydrates, you're looking for less than 10 grams of sugar per 100 grams, or less than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams if you are a little bit intolerant to sugary foods. And if you find that you have sugar in the product, just check the ingredients list again, because it might be natural sugars. You want to try and avoid the added sugars more so than the natural sugars. The next one down is fiber. We're looking for more than 3 grams per serve, and sodium, we're looking for less than 400 milligrams per 100 grams, or ideally less than 120 milligrams per 100 grams. Okay, so does that make sense? Can you hit like if that makes sense? Because I know I've just bombarded you with a whole bunch of information. I will put together a blog that explains all of this, and a little downloadable little wallet card so that you know exactly what you're looking for on the label, so that you can take it with you. Just chuck it in your bag as you go to the supermarket. Oh, good. Okay, I've got some likes, so that's good. I hope I haven't confused you all too much. And does anybody have questions about food labels, label reading, grams of anything that I haven't answered so far? Because I know it can be a little bit of a minefield. I guess the best thing also when looking at ingredients list is, once you've checked the top 3 ingredients, see what else is in it. Michael Pollan is a great food author, and he says if there's something on there that your grandmother wouldn't have understood or wouldn't have known what it was, then it's probably not the best choice. And I really like that, because it's just encouraging people to go back to quality, go back to unprocessed foods, go back to getting away from additives and preservatives, and really kind of just going back to eating what we were supposed to eat.